Ivan's Story, Part 2. Ivan sat on the transportation receiver bed, still held in a warm embrace with Captain Sky. Neither had let go, but each for a very different reason. Ivan had been so alone for the last several years, while working on his computer program to tap into the universe's knowledge, that he had withdrawn from society. Captain Sky was simply relieved to know that what they had believed to be a myth, a legend, the human race was in fact real. Captain Sky released the embrace and stepped back. Ivan looked pleadingly to both her and Dr. Sand. "I don't know how I'm your only hope," Ivan said quietly. "I'm just a computer programmer. I'm not a hero or anything." Captain Sky held his gaze with her large black eyes, giving him an unusual look as if she were trying to consider what he was saying above and beyond his mere words. "Ivan," she began, "we have been looking for a way to save all of the species of this part of the galaxy. Humans were promised to be that savior." "According to who?" Ivan asked, thinking of all the damage humans had done to Earth. "The first ones. They told us you were their heirs and would come to save us. It was written in stone on every planet in our assembly," she said, pointing vaguely at Dr. Sand. "We found our future stone in the place that my species was believed to have started," Dr. Sand said. "It was buried at a level consistent with being placed 50,000 cycles ago." "And our future stone," interjected Captain Sky, "was left on a plateau on our moon. It was identical to the one found on Dr. Sand's world." Ivan's eyes looked downward as he tried to understand what he was being told. "Someone left carved stones talking about humans for both of your species to find?" "Not just ours. 87 worlds spread throughout this sector have found a future stone somewhere on their planet or in their system close to their planet. We weren't even farmers that long ago. We were still hunters and gatherers." Ivan spoke mostly to himself. "You are all way more advanced than us. We haven't even sent people to other planets in our solar system." "But you got here. You tapped into the transportation stream," Dr. Sand said, gesturing to the surrounding room. "If you aren't advanced, how did you do that?" An expression of disbelief plastered across his scaled face. Ivan got off the bed and took another good look around. "You were trying to get someone else, right?" he said, turning to the doctor. "You asked if I was a communication expert." "Yes," said Dr. Sand with narrowing eyes. "We were expecting Quan Di." "I think I accidentally hijacked your signal. I've been trying to connect to the theoretical information network that is quantum locked under the universe," Ivan said, pacing back and forth, gently holding his chin. "I guess not so theoretical after all. My program seems to work." You used a computer program? To gain access to the transportation stream?" Computer Sky said, clearly trying hard to understand what Ivan was talking about. "That's not even possible unless you're on one of the planets of the assembly worlds." "Well, if you thought that Earth was just a fairy tale, then I can guess Earth isn't part of your stream network." Ivan said, clearly confused but fascinated by what was happening. "It's not our network," Captain Sky corrected. "It was created by the First Ones, just like this facility. It's First Ones tech. It's a meeting place where all can come if their world is connected." "Okay, we'll go ask them. They should know how this happened if they created the tech. In fact, I'd like to ask them how they knew about humans." "No one has seen them," Dr. Sand spoke plainly. "We only know about them because of the stones and the network that leads to this place. The First Ones left the future stones and a connection node in orbit around each world. The database in this facility shows what happened to their world and how it was destroyed, and the formation of Earth after. We could never find a system that matched what it shows, though. Can you show me? Ivan asked, desperately curious. Dr. Sand and Captain Sky looked at each other, exchanging a look of hesitation. Follow me, Captain Sky said, nodding her head towards the doorway. Ivan followed her through the facility, a place carved out of smooth, dark stone, except for the ceiling, which had tubes and wires running along the surface. Noticing his interest in the ceiling, Captain Sky noted, We did that. We updated and add our devices here as each new species learned of it. Ivan shook his head in understanding. That makes sense. These walls are smooth in comparison, he said as he ran a finger down the wall. As he touched it, the dark stone illuminated and left a glowing streak where Ivan had touched. Oh, that's cool, he exclaimed. Dr. Sand and Captain Sky both took in a quick gasp as they saw what happened. What? Ivan said, quickly pulling his hand back, feeling like he had done something horribly wrong. Do that again, said Dr. Sand. Ivan was going to protest, but decided to just go with it. He pressed his whole hand onto the wall and suddenly lit up the entire hallway with a brilliant light emanating from the stone walls and floor itself. Whoa, Ivan said breathlessly. That's new, Captain Sky said excitedly. Let's get Ivan into the star chamber, Dr. Sand said as he prodded them forward. The next opening to the right led into a large, spherical room with a platform extending directly into the center point. Going down the walkway and into the center was a short walk, revealing a very large room. The platform at the center had a console at which sat another of Captain Sky's species. They appeared to be a male of that species, having a similar build as Ivan himself. Anklor, please start the first one's dataset. Yes, Captain, Anklor said, tapping a few buttons on the all-black stone surface. The room exploded with light, showing a solar system with many planets, and zooming close to the fifth planet in the system. Wait a minute, Ivan said. That's Jupiter, he said, pointing to the large gas planet in the system. And those look like Saturn and Uranus. As he was speaking, the fifth planet in the system was changing. It was moving in rapid geology and advancing in technology in what was apparently a fast-forwarded history of the planet. Oceans receded and continents shifted. Lights began appearing all over the dark side of the world. Things seemed to slow and pull back as it shifted into a view of a wandering moon circling Jupiter. The moon was not in a circular orbit, and after moving too close was launched out of orbit and directly towards the fifth planet. The moon quickly covered the distance, and just before impact, time seemed to slow even more, showing circular ships abandoning the planet in all directions. The speed resumed, and the moon impacted the planet in a burst of light and fire that split the planet into pieces. The largest of the pieces, part moon and part planet fused together, hurled itself into the inner solar system. The oceans that had been thrown outwards froze and drifted into space, most being pulled into the gravitational wake of the large piece of broken planetoid. The view followed the large form as it passed the fourth planet, which claimed some of the frozen ocean shards into its orbit. It continued until smashing into the third planet, which was a rocky ocean world. The impact fractured the planet, boiling the oceans in a low-orbit steam cloud. But it absorbed most of the heavy material into its core. A small amount of rocky debris was shot into far orbit, creating rings. The planet slowly cooled and solidified as the rings began to combine and eventually formed a moon. More of the frozen ocean shards rained down as meteors, combining with the oceans that have boiled off, cooled, and fallen back to the surface. Life once again took hold and time sped up. Oceans freezing and thawing, continents moving and colliding, until the planet slowed and once again lights appeared in the darkness. With his mouth open and eyes filled with wonder, Ivan slowly pointed to the newly formed planet. "That's Earth," he said, "but like now Earth, not then Earth." "Yes, the connection nodes have been recording every planet they orbit and update constantly," Captain Sky said, looking at Ivan expectantly once again. "But there was no planet between Mars and Jupiter. It's, Ivan began. "An asteroid belt," Dr. Sand finished. "Yes, that is what is left of the first one's world. Their planet filled with life is what seeded your planet. That's why you can save us. You have their adaptable building blocks of life." "Bennu," Ivan said. "They just released info they collected from an asteroid named Bennu in that belt that showed all the markers of life. All the amino acids and genetic markers for creating DNA." "What is DNA?" Dr. Sand asked inquisitively, tapping his own earbuds, which weren't helping translate the acronym. "It's the building blocks of all life on Earth. It's what makes me, well, me," Ivan said sheepishly, realizing that his memory of ninth grade biology was exhausted, and all he had remaining in his mind was the article that NASA had released about the asteroid. "DNA is a double helix made up of 4 compounds and pieced together in different ways to make all life. It's called, give me a second, it's on the tip of my tongue." Ivan closed his eyes, searching his memory for what DNA stood for. Deoxyribonucleic acid, I think. "How much life is based on this?" Dr. Sand asked. "All of it," Ivan said. "All of what?" Captain Sky asked quickly. "All of life on Earth," Ivan said. "Plants, animals, trees, humans, anything alive." He paused and looked at all 3 of them again. "Is that not how it works on your worlds?" "No, it isn't," Dr. Sand said. "We are suffering from a corrupted genetic grouping, repeated patterns of genetic material based off a single thread of 3 compounds. That's why we are all gathered here. We are trying to save our worlds from the corrupted patterns causing malformations. Each species connected to this place has the same issue. It seems that is what makes humans special. Your genetic variety is unparalleled for a single world. I guess we know why now." "If you have so many worlds, why don't you just mix your different species' genetic info?" Ivan asked, as if that was a simple question. "It doesn't work like that," Captain Sky said. "Each world has its own patterns. They are not able to combine with anything else. There are only a couple of dozen examples from each world, and each one is fixed in its genetic pathway." Ivan's mind exploded with questions. This made no sense to him. "A couple of dozen creatures on each planet." "A couple of dozen genetic examples on each planet, Ivan. Not all of those are creatures. Most are plants," Dr. Sand corrected. Finally, Ivan understood. "Earth has millions of examples," he said quietly, realizing how diverse his home truly was. He understood that they had lost more plants and animals in the last century than had ever existed in this part of the universe. "How can Earth help?" he asked, feeling the pressure of obligation and the weight of the gazes upon him. "We don't know," Dr. Sand admitted. "We were just told on the future stones that your species is the key to helping us. We have no idea how or why." He looked at Captain Sky. "We always thought you would know," she said with the hint of tears beginning to fill her eyes. Ivan stood thinking for a moment or two. Babies? Asked Ivan. That's how the species on Earth keep their genetics from deforming. Maybe that could work here? Half human and half... Ivan waved his hands toward the three on the platform. Of you? Only if our genetics can mix with yours. I guess that's where we should start, said Dr. Sand. Perhaps we could take samples and just see what happens. What kind of examples? Asked Ivan, suddenly worried. How do you contribute your genetic material when producing offspring? Captain Sky asked. Before, you said half from each parent. Our kind produces young through the splitting of cells stored inside of us. You don't mix your genetics with others, even amongst your own people? Ivan asked, confused. No, it's a duplication of each individual, said Dr. Sand. Ivan felt an odd lightness fill his mind. The species of Earth have two genetic donors, one large cell and one small cell. They mix and combine genetic info, which then splits and multiplies following the DNA as a plan. It makes an individual that is similar but genetically different than each of the original donors. For humans, there are men and women. A woman has the large cell and the internal organ for supporting the growth of the baby. A man has the small cell that gets contributed through the use of their external organ into the woman. Ivan said, surprised that this info came out so clearly, being that he wasn't sure he knew all of it to begin with. Or that's the case with most animals. I think fish and trees are different. I think. Which are you? Asked Captain Sky. What do you mean? Which what? Ivan asked, unsure of the question. I think Captain Sky is asking you if you are the woman or the man of your species, clarified Dr. Sand. Man. I'm a man, Ivan said with a half chuckle, only realizing at that exact moment that the beings before him weren't gendered. He had only made assumptions based on their shape. I have the small genetic info which goes into the large cell to fertilize it and allow it to begin growing, I think is the best term. That could work with a good many of the assembly worlds, Dr. Sand thought out loud. Many of those species have an internal organ that supports the offspring as it matures inside. If we could add in the small cell before it begins to self-multiply, then perhaps the genetics could mix. We would just need a willing participant to try to accept the small cell. Whoa! Slow down there, Doctor. I wasn't planning on making a baby personally. I figured that once we identify where my world is located, you can work with scientists there to help diversify your genetics. That's not possible currently. The facility is only one-directional. We can send messages out, but that's all. Once you come here, you can't leave. Ivan stood shocked in silence for a moment before suddenly becoming dizzy at that news. I need to sit down, he said shakily, and moved to lean against the black console, which was the only structure on the platform. As Ivan steadied himself against the console, it lit up like the hall had done. Lights filled the cavernous sphere, and a voice rang out. Welcome, human. Genetic heir of the planet you know as Phaethon. Ivan's eyes somehow grew wider. He swayed, tilting back and forth ominously. I don't, he began. I don't feel so good. The lights dimmed when Ivan's hand lifted, but did not go out, even when Ivan passed out. He hit the floor with a hard and resonating thud. The last thing his fading mind understood was the phrase, calculating return trajectory, as spoken by the mysterious booming voice. That is the end of part 2. There'll be one more part coming soon. Please follow and like the video to make sure you're notified when the third video comes out.